This dinosaur will leave every atheist speechless. Many skeptics reject the Bible because they say there's no mention of dinosaurs there. Okay, Mr. Atheist, in a moment's time, I'm going to describe to you a creature called Behemoth. And as I read this description, you tell me, what is this creature it's describing? This creature has a long tail like a cedar tree. This creature eats a plant-based diet.
Oh, the creature eats a plant-based diet. Well, okay, that's really narrowing it down for us. That's making it a lot more specific. It's plant-based diet, okay. It's not like there's plenty of animals that have plant-based diets.
This creature can stand in the middle of a raging river without being disturbed. And this creature, above all, is so powerful that no man can capture it. What is this creature the Bible is describing? Well, if you can't see that it's a Brontosaurus or a Diplodocus, personally, I think you're being a little bit stubborn.
How come the passage doesn't mention the animal having a long neck? You'd think if this was a passage about that kind of a dinosaur, like the guy was showing in his video, of all the features, wouldn't that be the most conspicuous to mention? But what I'm confused about is most atheists accept dinosaurs. They tend to be materialists. They tend to accept the scientific mainstream narrative. So I'm not sure why a Christian would want to appeal to dinosaurs in order to prove something to atheists. Maybe, I guess, they want to prove that, well, God knew about the dinosaurs, God created the dinosaurs, and therefore that's an argument for God, I guess, but the atheist isn't going to accept that. I just think that's a bit silly, but... So I went and read over the passages in question, which are in the book of Job, chapters 40, and to an extent chapter 41, where it's describing some monster that these Protestants think or some of them think it's a dinosaur. Now, I read in the Orthodox Study Bible and in the King James Bible, and it was interesting to see the differences. In summary, most of the writing between the two Bibles is generally the same meaning. They're using different wording a lot of the time and different expressions, but for most of the passages, I would say that the implication is the same meaning. There are, however, several places where it's a different sense altogether, and with the footnotes that adds another layer of meaning. So what we learn from the footnotes is that the monster being described is actually Satan. And right at the beginning, verse 15 of chapter 40, God, who is speaking to Job, God says, "But look now at the wild animals with you. They eat grass like oxen." Wild animals, as we learn from the footnotes, which is representing Holy Tradition, is saying that the wild animals are seen by some church fathers as a type of Satan, the ancient enemy. So that sets the whole context for the rest of this chapter. It's describing Satan, and it gets into an interesting way of describing Satan as these wild animals and some mighty animal on land, and then it switches at some point near chapter 41 they're describing something that would sound like a dragon, like a monster, but who in their right mind thinks that a dragon is a dinosaur? I know some people might make that connection, but traditionally a dragon breathes fire. Maybe it has wings, or it lives in a cave, but it's associated with something more than just a strange animal. There's usually a spiritual significance to the dragon. Usually it's the bad, it's the malevolent, it's bad, and I guess in the Christian tradition, it's one representation of Satan. I don't think that's very controversial to say that. That's just kind of the knight, he goes and slays the dragon. Why? The dragon's the bad guy. He gets slain by the knight, who's the good guy, right? So that's why I'm bringing this up. As the passage goes on, it describes breathing fire. It describes as a creature with an attitude, like his heart is hard as a stone, I believe it says here. Yeah, his heart is as hard as a stone, and it stands like an unyielding anvil. It's kind of describing what the Orthodox Study Bible says is the serpent, and what the King James says is Leviathan. So the King James, we have this mention of behemoth and Leviathan. There is no mention of behemoth in the Orthodox. It's the wild animals. There is no mention of Leviathan. There's the mention of the serpent. And it's mentioning in the context of the serpent with a hook, catching a serpent with a hook, so you can think of maybe some sort of aquatic beast. But it's really not clear, because as the passage goes on, it kind of blends together in a sense. So I found myself, having read this several times, still not clear as to what exactly, how are we to interpret this monster. Is it one monster? Is it two monsters? It seems to be two monsters, but I'm not entirely sure, because, and again, if the wild animals are plural, but then we shift to the singular, but it's Satan, right? Satan can take on different forms. He's described in different ways. This is lost if you're just seeing this as a description of a dinosaur. This would all go over the heads of our English friend, the street preacher guy, who thinks you're stubborn if you don't see this passage as being something like a dinosaur. Well, who's the stubborn one here? Because if he was willing to take seriously holy tradition and get out of his Protestant mindset, if he was willing to take seriously holy tradition, then he would easily come across this information that, no, actually we're describing Satan here. At this point, I'm going to discuss some more examples comparing these two chapters, 40 and 41, in the book of Job, between the King James Bible and the Orthodox Study Bible, to see cases where they say seemingly different things and that there can be different interpretations. Or verse 12, Orthodox Study Bible, extinguish the arrogant men, and consume them, and consume at once the ungodly. King James, look on every one that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. The Orthodox Study Bible, hide them together in the earth, and fill their faces with disgrace. King James, hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Well, then here again it's different, because in the Orthodox Study Bible it says, hide them together in the earth and fill their faces with disgrace, whereas the King James says, hide them in the dust together and bind their faces in secret. So in the dust and in the earth, again, in our current times, that would imply related but different things, because in the dust you're usually not buried. It's just a totally different sense of meaning. And then bind their faces in secret as opposed to bind their faces with disgrace. Well, that's just a different thing. That's not even seeming to me, in my limited perspective here, that doesn't even seem like a related word at all. Those are different things. Disgrace and secrets, they can be related, but Orthodox Study Bible, he sets up his tail like a cypress. His nerves are tightly knit. King James, he moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. So again, this verse 17, very different. What I'm focusing on is moveth his tail like a cedar, whereas set up his tail like a cypress. Sets up, what do they even mean by that? But it doesn't convey quite the same effect as moving your tail. It's more sensational, it's more clear, like what your conception of what a dinosaur must be doing. The Orthodox Study Bible, when he goes up to a rough mountain, he causes joy to the four-footed animals in Tartarus, or Tartarus. King James, Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. Wow, this is really different in the King James. The King James has changed a lot. When he goes up to a rough mountain, he causes joy to the four-footed animals in Tartarus, and surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. Entirely different sense to those two different sentences. I thought that was useful for one purpose, to settle this idea that there's a dinosaur in the book of Job. No, I think we can say, having looked in proper context, it's like reading the full chapters of King James and the Orthodox Study Bible. I don't think in either case there's some wording in the King James which is can lean more towards seeing this as some reptile. Like they're talking about the scales and all that. But again, it's dragon imagery, and that's not all that different from what the Orthodox Study Bible says. There's no mention of the monster scales in the Orthodox Study Bible, not here anyways. It really makes you wonder, why are certain sentences just left out here and there? Do we ever need tradition? Because if all we have is books and ourselves and our own reasoning abilities, well, good luck. And that's really the second purpose of this video. The more important purpose was to show that Sola Scriptura is a terrible methodology. Just relying on the Bible and expecting it to be clear and to see things clearly, that's a horrible idea. And as we can see, modern ideas about dinosaurs allowed people to start to see things that aren't supposed to be seen there, not traditionally anyways. Hasta luego, amigos!